Everybody should be free.
Everybody should be free.
From the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea.
They were arrested in the middle of the night from their homes. They're completely traumatized. They're not able to, their parents weren't able to protect them. So how could they possibly trust someone on the phone who happens to speak proper Arabic?
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. CNN has fired its contributor, Marc Lamont Hill, supposedly for making a speech to the United Nations on Palestine Day and calling for a free Palestine from the river to the sea. The river in question is the Jordan and the sea, the Mediterranean, the area in between called Palestine since Roman times. Right now, it's an apartheid state run by a Jewish supremacy government. The forces of militarism and racism joined together to get Hill bounced from the CNN network. Here are the last 2 minutes of Marc Lamont Hill's excellent speech to the UN, including the section where he calls for justice from the river to the sea. We enter as Hill is talking about the protesters in Ferguson getting tear gassed after the killing of Michael Brown.
And later that night, when the police began to tear gas us, Maryam Barghouti tweeted us from Ramallah. She, along with other Palestinian youth activists, told us that the tear gas that we were experiencing was only temporary. They gave us tips for how to wash our eyes out. They told us how to make gas masks out of T-shirts. They gave us permission to think and dream beyond our local conditions by giving us a transnational or a global solidarity project. And from those tweets and social media messages, we began then to organize together. We brought a delegation of black activists to Palestine, and we saw the connections between the police in New York City who were being trained by Israeli soldiers and the type of policing we were experiencing in New York City. We began to see relationships of resistance, and we began to build and struggle and organize together. That spirit of solidarity, a solidarity that is bound up not just in ideology, but in action, is the way out. So as we stand here on the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the tragic commemoration of the Nakba, we have an opportunity to not just offer solidarity in words, but to commit to political action, grassroots action, local action, and international action that will give us what justice requires. And that is a free Palestine from the river to the sea. Thank you for your time.
Hill's position for a democratic state in Palestine met with hysteria on the part of Israeli leaders. Jewish Voice for Peace backed Marc Lamont Hill. I urge you to watch the entire excellent speech by Hill. You can see it if you go to the Facebook page of Existence is Resistance.
We stand with Marc Lamont Hill.
Yes, we stand.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
CNN, tell the truth. Don't let Zionists silence you. CNN, tell the truth. Don't let Zionists silence you. CNN, tell the truth.
I want to say why we are here.
I want to say why we are here.
We are here in support.
We are here in support
of Dr. Marc Lamont Hill.
Of Dr. Marc Lamont Hill.
And we are outraged.
And we are outraged
that CNN.
That CNN.
It's shitty anyway. which we call the United Nothing. The United Nothing. After he spoke out against Israel's oppression of the Palestinian people. Dr. Hill said, everybody should be free. From the river to the sea. And the Zionists got hurt. So they pressured CNN. To silence the realist journalist that speaks for the people.
One more, because it's cold.
They take care of us, you see, our people. I'm hoping that this will be the beginning of a real fight against anti-Semitic white supremacist Zionists.
So the Palestinian Youth Movement wrote a statement along with the Swana Alliance in support of Marc Lamont Hill that I'd like to read for you all today. As Palestinian, Arab, and Swana youth, we are writing in support of Marc Lamont Hill and his righteous support of the Palestinian struggle for liberation and self-determination at the United Nations on Wednesday, November 28th, 2018, for the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. The Zionist backlash he is facing is slanderous and a continuation of selective suppression of speech. Among the actions taken against Marc has been the CNN's cowardly response, stating that he is no longer under contract with the news organization. We wholeheartedly condemn any and all intimidation to silence Marc, which reflects the United States history of targeting people of color, specifically black folks, for their political activism. CNN claims to champion facts first, but turns away from honest reporting on Palestine. This comes as no surprise, as CNN repeatedly demonizes and spews racist rhetoric about Palestinians, even while they are being massacred, displaced, and incarcerated by the settler colonial entity Israel.
When I heard last night that there was a demonstration here, I thought that this is a brilliant opportunity to revive a long tradition of Black and Palestinian solidarity that we need desperately today. Marc Lamont Hill went to Palestine as part of a long tradition of African Americans going abroad to the places where people are oppressed to bear witness to oppression.
All right, next up, we have a couple of very amazing speakers. We got Philadelphia in the House, a MOVE organization. Free Mumia Abu Jamal and all political prisoners from Palestine to Philly. Next up, make some noise for Alexi from Within Our Lifetime United for Palestine.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alexi Shalom. I'm from Within Our Lifetime United for Palestine. We are a Palestinian-led youth group based in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and the rest of New York City that grew out of the campuses actually supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. And so Marc and all of the black activists in this country that stand up for Palestine are actually those that inspired us to organize ourselves in the same way that the brave people of Ferguson and Baltimore and Oakland and New York City organized themselves. And so we draw direct inspiration for them, and so it's no coincidence that we would show up here for them today and for Marc Lamont Hill today. You know, I think that when people talk about Palestine, it's often talked about in a way Palestine versus Israel, right? I think Michael Letwin said it best just now, that it's not Palestine versus Israel because Israel is not a state. It's a military regime that rules over a people. And so and I think Marc Lamont Hill said it really well in his response when he said, you know, if you believe that Israel has to be destroyed in order for Palestinians to get their rights, that's your problem, because how can you support a regime that needs to be destroyed for people to have their basic rights? Anti-Zionism is not a radical, crazy political position that doesn't want to divide the country. Anti-Zionism is the fulfillment of the basic human rights of the Palestinian people and all oppressed people all over the world. And I think this is really important because often I think, you know, growing up in New York City, growing up in Brooklyn, we see Palestine as something very far away. But Israel is a regime that doesn't only oppress Palestinians. In the last few years, Israel's leader Netanyahu has been meeting with the Jobbik Nazi party in Hungary, has been training Nazi militias in Ukraine, has been supporting far-right regimes all over the world, including the South African regime, with whom they developed their own nuclear weapons. And so when we fight for anti-Zionism, when we fight for freedom from the river to the sea, it's not just a fight for Palestinian human rights, but for oppressed people all over the world. I think it's also important that we situate CNN in this whole scenario. CNN has put itself as the voice of the so-called resistance in the United States against the Donald Trump regime. But we know that Israel is best friends with the Donald Trump regime. That Israel secures political, economic, and social support from Donald Trump, just as it secured that support from past U.S. presidents. And so it's really important that CNN is not a progressive channel. CNN is a business that sells a product. And right now the product that sells is so-called progressive news, and that is the only reason why they are supporting Hillary Clinton or supporting the so-called resistance and the Democratic machine. And so it's really important that we see that when CNN's bottom line is challenged, right, for them to put forward an anti-Zionist commentator, he is cut immediately. And so we condemn CNN for their attack on free speech in the media, but also for their hypocritical stand with the so-called resistance. The only resistance we stand with is the anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist resistance of Marc Lamont Hill and others. Thank you so much.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Marc Lamont Hill is a professor at Temple University, a public college in Philadelphia. Temple's chairman, Patrick O'Connor, called up a local Philly newspaper, went on a rant, and called Hill's remarks disgusting, and said no one at Temple is happy with Marc Lamont Hill. By no one, of course, he means the corporate types he hangs around with. Patrick O'Connor is a lawyer. He comes to Temple from a giant law firm called Cousin O'Connor that specializes in helping out banks. Certainly, Chairman O'Connor never asked the professors at Temple or the students what they thought of Hill's speech to the United Nations. The union there that represents the faculty is the AFT, and they are full supporting Hill's free speech and academic freedom rights. So is the American Association of University Professors. It's up to us to make sure that Temple University doesn't fire or punish or suspend Marc Lamont Hill. Now the conclusion of the talk by Ruba Awadallah of the Defense of Children International, Palestine. Her subject, the atrocious mistreatment of Palestinian children by Israel.
Israel has the dubious distinction of being the only country in the world that systematically prosecutes an estimated 500 to 700 children each year in military courts lacking fundamental fair trial rights. Children within the Israeli military system commonly report physical and verbal abuse from the moment of their arrest and coercion and threats during interrogations. It's important to note that around 50% of children who are arrested from their homes in the middle of the night, meaning they are not posing any direct threat at the time. So imagine now you're a 12, 13, 14, Palestinian boy or girl. You're in your home, the safest place in the world. Your parents are around you. It's a school night, you finished your homework, you had a lovely dinner, you went to your bed. What wrong could happen? And then at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, you wake up to find 6, 7 soldiers in front of you, pointing their guns at you and telling you, wake up, get up, and come with us. In many cases, you look around and you don't find your parents in that room, because sometimes when they raid a house, they put all family members in one room and then go to the room that the wanted child or person is in. So there's nobody around to help you. Where are my parents? Those are the ones who tell me, you should study well at school, we know what's best for your future. And now when I'm being arrested, they're not here and not able to help me. In other cases, parents are in the same room, but they're completely paralyzed and not able to do anything. They might try to stop the arrest, but they're not able to do anything. And in some cases, they might be yelled at or beaten in front of their children. So this experience really hurts the parent-child relationship, because children no longer trust their parents and say, well, you're not able to protect me, although they really want to, but they're not able to. DCIP collected affidavits from 77 West Bank children detained and prosecuted under the jurisdiction of Israeli military courts between January 1st, 2018 and September 30th. The data shows that 80% of children endured some form of physical violence following their arrest, and 57% were verbally abused, intimidated, or humiliated. Of these 77 children, 11 were held in solitary confinement for interrogation purposes for an average period of 15 days. The longest period of isolation for a child that DCIP documented during this period was 26 days. So that's almost a complete month in complete isolation. And what happens when you're put in solitary confinement for interrogation purposes is that you're put in this small cell for, let's say, 4 or 5 days, and then they take you back for interrogation and they use it against you. They tell you, you know how horrible it is there. If you do not confess, we will send you back to that room and put you in isolation for an additional 20 days. So they pressure children to confess using these methods. Palestinian child detainees have no right to an attorney during interrogation under Israeli military law. But according to Israeli military law, they do have the right to get legal consultation prior interrogation. In many cases, children do not get this right, but for children who do get this right, sometimes they do not get proper legal consultation. What they get is legal consultation via phone, and this is problematic for both the child and the lawyer. It's problematic for the child because now they have trust issues. They were arrested in the middle of the night from their homes. They're completely traumatized. They're not able to, their parents weren't able to protect them. So how could they possibly trust someone on the phone who happens to speak proper Arabic? It could simply be an Israeli officer who speaks fluent Arabic, and this person is telling them, tell me everything and trust me, and this is what you have to do. It's problematic for the lawyer if he or she is a real lawyer, because they don't know who's listening to this conversation and they don't want the child to say anything that would harm him or her. So they end up giving general advice that really at that moment it's not really useful, because the child is really afraid and completely on their own, and they need someone to be physically there in the room to comfort them. The vast majority of children do not have a parent present with them during interrogation. So throughout the process, mostly they're on their own. Despite sustained engagement by UNICEF and repeated calls to end night arrests and ill treatment and torture of Palestinian children in Israeli military detention, Israeli authorities have persistently failed to implement practical changes to end violence against child detainees. I have a video in which child ex-detainees talk about their experience in the Israeli military detention system. Let's hear the story from them.
عشان هم مسافرين في الجيب عن مستعمرة ضغط على كل شيء بس كان كده.
برنامج سياسة الضرب بالسيارة يخبط فيه يعني لكن وجع.
ولكن شكل واعي مشهد شعوري هذا أنا مش هنتلاقي البصرة بعد البصرة مش أريد كمية وقصة البصرة وأبرز هذا الجمل من سرعة الجهاد.
Sadly, the rights situation for Palestinian children in the Gaza Strip doesn't look good either. Repeated military assaults and the decade-long Israeli blockade on the Gaza Strip deny and disrupt access to food, healthcare, education, and safe spaces, amounting to collective punishment against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, which is prohibited under the 14 Geneva Convention. Last year, DCIP documented 12 Palestinian children from the Gaza Strip who died as a result of inadequate access to healthcare, including poor hospital conditions, low availability of specialized treatments, or as a result of being delayed or denied treatment abroad. Of this number, 9 were infants and 8 were less than 2 weeks old. So these are the main rights issues that I wish to touch upon, but it's important to always remember that when we talk about children's rights in Palestine, it's not just the injuries and the fatalities and children in the Israeli military detention. We should also think about children who pass checkpoints every single day to reach their schools, children whose houses were demolished, and so many other rights violations that Palestinian children face. You can find features and videos on these rights violations on our website and Facebook page. Just write Defense for Children International Palestine section and you'll find all these materials. But now what could we do? As mentioned earlier, and as many of you know, in November 2017, Representative Betty McCollum and 9 co-sponsors introduced the first ever bill in the US Congress focused on Palestinian human rights, specifically grave human rights violations against Palestinian child detainees. The Promoting Human Rights by Ending Israeli Military Detention of Palestinian Children Act, or HR 4391, seeks to promote justice, equality, and human rights by ensuring that United States financial assistance provided to the government of Israel is not used to support the detention of Palestinian children by Israeli forces in a military detention system where ill treatment is widespread and institutionalized. The bill currently has 30 supporters. The bill requires the U.S. Secretary of State to certify annually that no funds obligated or expended by the U.S. for assistance to Israel have been used to support the ill treatment of Palestinian children detained by Israeli forces from the occupied West Bank in violation with international law. It does not place conditions on military aid and leaves current financial assistance to the government of Israel in place. Lawmakers can join as co-sponsors through the end of the current congressional sessions. You can help by telling your lawmakers to support HR 4391 and by signing the petition to become a citizen co-sponsor of the bill. The bill, as Anne said, the petition is in the room, but also you can find it on our website, the campaign's website, nowaytotreatachild.org. And also you can find more information on the bill and the ill treatment of Palestinian children in the Israeli military detention system on that website as well. So this is everything for me. Thank you very much.
Wednesday, December 12th in Hartford is the rescheduled event in honor of the 2 Syrian heroes assassinated in Idlib. Their names were Raed Fares and Hamoud Janeed. Singer Dylan Connor will perform and will talk about the time he met Raed Fares. 6 p.m., Wednesday, December 12th in the Hartford Library. See thestruggle.org for details. These are a series of selfies done in solidarity with Fares and Janid and Syrian democracy. This is from a Syria solidarity protest in Germany.
The only difference is the name. ISIS are the same. The only difference is the name. ISIS are the same. The only difference is the name. يلعن روحك يلعن روحك يلعن روحك يلعن روحك يا حبيب يلعن روحك يا حبيب.
Saudi Arabia. Finally, CIA Chief Gina Haspel was allowed to brief top senators about the Khashoggi murder. Republican Senator Corker, after hearing from Haspel, said about the Crown Prince, if he was in front of a jury, he would be convicted in 30 minutes. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, he said, there's not a smoking gun, but a smoking saw. More importantly, Graham said that he wouldn't support weapons going to Saudi Arabia for its Yemen war while Prince Salman was running things. The big Senate vote on Yemen will test all this. Here's a great picture of the street in front of the Saudi embassy in D.C., renamed after Jamal Khashoggi. It's unofficial at this point, a citizen effort only, but the sign hasn't been taken down. Keep the pressure up. Demand the war against Yemen be ended. Demand the return of Khashoggi's remains and freedom for the Saudi feminists and all Saudi political prisoners. That's our show for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.